I was kneeling beside the bathtub, rinsing shampoo out of Nora's hair, when she flinched. Not a little flinch. Her whole body went rigid, arms crossed over her face like she was bracing for impact. I pulled my hand back like I'd touched a burner. "Sweetheart, I'm not going to hurt you." She lowered her arms slowly, and what she said next, in a voice so small it barely existed, made the walls of my bathroom close in around me. "That's what Mommy says, too." Right before My granddaughter was left in our care while her parents vacationed overseas. But her behavior revealed a disturbing truth. My name is Doreen, and I'm 67 years old. I've been married to my husband Franklin for 41 years, raised 2 children in a house with a leaky porch roof and more love than square footage, and spent the last decade settling into the kind of quiet life people write greeting cards about. Franklin retired from teaching 3 years ago. I left my job at the county library a year before that. We garden, we walk, we eat dinner at 5:30 because we've earned the right to eat whenever we want. Life is calm, and for a long time, I thought calm was the reward for surviving everything that came before it. Our son, Mitchell, is 40. Our daughter, Corinna, is 37. Mitchell lives about an hour away with his wife, Laureen, and their daughter, Nora, who just turned 6. Corinna lives on the other side of the country and calls every couple of weeks, usually while she's driving somewhere. I love both my children, but if I'm being honest, the kind of honest that costs you something, I've spent the last few years wondering if I know them as well as I think I do, especially Mitchell. Mitchell was always the easier child. He followed instructions. He got good grades without being asked. He married a woman who seemed polished and put together, Laureen, a marketing consultant with perfect posture and a smile that arrived half a second too late to be natural. I noticed that about her early on. The delay. Like every expression was a decision, not a reaction. Franklin told me I was reading too much into it. "She's just reserved, Doreen. Not everyone runs warm." I let it go. You let a lot of things go when your child is happy, or when they tell you they're happy, and you choose to believe it because the alternative is too heavy to carry. I think the hardest part of being a parent to grown children is knowing when their silence is peace and when it's a wall they've built to keep you on the other side. When Mitchell called in March and asked if Nora could stay with us for 10 days while he and Laureen took a vacation overseas, I said yes before he finished the sentence. Franklin and I hadn't had Nora for more than an afternoon in months. Laureen always had a reason. Nora's schedule, her activities, a birthday party, something. Getting 10 full days felt like a gift. Mitchell dropped Nora off on a Saturday morning. She came in with a pink rolling suitcase, a stuffed rabbit she called Professor, and eyes that looked too large for her face. Not in a cute way, in a watchful way. Like she was taking measurements of the room before deciding if it was safe. "She's been a little clingy lately," Mitchell said at the door, one hand on Nora's shoulder. "Just transition stuff. Starting a new school year, new teacher." "We'll take great care of her," Franklin said, crouching down to Nora's level. "You and Professor ready for an adventure?" Nora nodded but didn't smile. Mitchell kissed the top of her head and left. I watched his car pull out and noticed he didn't look back. Not once. The first 2 days were mostly normal. Nora was polite, almost too polite. She said please and thank you for everything, cleared her plate without being asked, and sat so still at the dinner table that Franklin joked she was better behaved than he was. But there were small things. She asked permission before opening the refrigerator. She asked permission before sitting on the couch. She asked permission before turning on the television, even after I told her she could watch whatever she wanted. Nora, honey, this is your house too while you're here. You don't need to ask for every little thing. She looked at me with those wide eyes and said, Mommy says I should always ask first, so nobody gets upset. I smiled and told her that was good manners, but inside something shifted. Not alarm, not yet, just a pebble dropping into water. On the third night, I made spaghetti, Nora's favorite, according to Mitchell. She ate carefully, twirling her fork the way someone had clearly taught her, napkin in her lap. Franklin was telling her a long, ridiculous story about a squirrel that had gotten into our attic last spring, and for the first time, she laughed. A real laugh, high and bright and startled, like she'd surprised herself by making the sound. Then she knocked over her glass of milk. It wasn't dramatic. A small glass, a small spill. The milk spread across the table toward the breadbasket, and I was already reaching for a napkin when Nora's entire body changed. She went stiff. Her hands flew to her lap. Her chin dropped to her chest, and she whispered, so fast it was almost one word. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Franklin and I looked at each other across the table. He put his hand flat on the surface, gently, the way you approach a frightened animal. Nora, it's just milk, sweetheart. Watch this. He picked up his own glass and deliberately tipped it over. Milk pooled around his plate. See? No big deal. She stared at the puddle on his side of the table, then at him, then at me. Her lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. She looked like a child who had been taught that crying was another kind of spill. There are things you see in a child's eyes that you can never unsee, not because they're dramatic, but because they're so small and so practiced that you realize the fear has been there longer than you thought possible. That night, after Nora was asleep in the guest room with Professor tucked under her arm, I sat on the edge of our bed and told Franklin what I was feeling. Something's wrong in that house. He was quiet for a moment. Franklin doesn't react fast. He processes. It used to frustrate me when we were younger, but now I rely on it. The milk thing was unusual, he said carefully. It's not just the milk. It's the asking permission, the way she sits, the way she flinched yesterday when I raised my hand to fix her ponytail. Kids flinch, Doreen. Not like that. Not like they've been trained to. He took his glasses off and rubbed his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't think Laureen is who we think she is. He didn't argue. He didn't agree. He just said, let's pay attention. Which was Franklin's way of saying he was scared too. Over the next few days, I watched. Not interrogated. Watched. I let Nora lead. We baked cookies and she apologized for getting flour on the counter. We drew pictures and she asked if she was allowed to use the red crayon. We went for a walk and she held my hand so tightly I could feel her pulse. On day 5, the bathtub moment happened. I was washing her hair, gently, the way I used to wash Karina's when she was small, and she flinched so violently she nearly slipped. Arms over her face, body locked. Sweetheart, I'm not going to hurt you. She lowered her arms, and her voice was a thread. That's what Mommy says too. Right before she squeezes my arm really hard and says I need to listen better. The bathroom got very small. I could hear the faucet dripping. I could hear Franklin downstairs washing dishes. I could hear my own heartbeat in my temples. Does Mommy squeeze your arm a lot? Nora looked at the bubbles in the water. Only when I'm bad. How often are you bad, sweetheart? She thought about it. The fact that she had to think about it, like she was counting incidents in her head, broke something inside me that I didn't know could still break. Sometimes every day. I wrapped her in a towel and held her. She was stiff at first, then slowly, her arms came up around my neck. She didn't cry. I did. Quietly, into her wet hair, where she couldn't see. That night, after Nora fell asleep, I called Karina. Not Mitchell, Karina. Because I needed to talk to someone who wasn't inside the situation, and because Karina had said something to me 2 years ago that I'd dismissed and now couldn't stop thinking about. We'd been at a family gathering, a summer cookout at our place. Lorene had taken Nora inside to change her clothes after she'd gotten grass stains on her dress. They were in the hallway, and Karina had come to me in the kitchen and said, "Mom, did you hear how Lorene just talked to Nora?" "What do you mean?" "She grabbed her arm and told her she was embarrassing her. The kid had grass stains. She's 4. I'd said, "Lorene's strict. Some parents are strict, Karina." "That wasn't strict, Mom. That was mean." I told her she was overreacting. She gave me a look I'll never forget. Disappointed but not surprised, and walked away. I've been thinking about all the things people tried to tell me that I wasn't ready to hear. I called them overreactions. I called them misunderstandings. What I was really doing was choosing comfort over truth because the truth required me to act. On the phone, Karina listened to everything. She didn't say I told you so. She said, "What do you want to do?" "I don't know. If I tell Mitchell knows, Mom." That hit me like a physical thing. You don't know that. He lives there. He sees what we only see at holidays. Either he knows and he's doing nothing, or he's choosing not to see it. Either way, calling him isn't going to fix this. Franklin was sitting next to me on the bed, listening to my side. When I hung up, he said, "She's right, isn't she?" "I don't want her to be right." "I know. But wanting doesn't change things." The next morning, I did something I'm not sure I should have done. While Nora was in the backyard with Franklin, picking tomatoes from the garden, I went through her suitcase. Not to snoop, to look for something I was praying I wouldn't find. I found a drawing. Folded up and tucked inside the pocket of a dress Nora hadn't worn yet. A crayon drawing, the kind 6-year-olds make, with the big round heads and stick bodies. 3 figures. A tall one with yellow hair, labeled Mommy in wobbly letters. A smaller one labeled Me. And between them, a red scribble. Not a person, not an object, just an angry cloud of red, pressed so hard into the paper that the crayon had torn through in places. I sat on the edge of the guest bed holding that drawing and felt 41 years of motherhood collapse into a single point of failure. My son's wife was hurting my granddaughter, and I had spent years smiling across tables and telling myself it was just strictness. I called Mitchell that afternoon. He answered on the 3rd ring, and I could hear ocean waves in the background. He sounded relaxed. Happy, even. "Mom, everything okay? Is Nora all right?" "Nora is fine. Mitchell, I need to talk to you about something important." "Can it wait? We're about to head to dinner." "It cannot wait." I told him. All of it. The flinching, the over-apologizing, the milk, the bathtub, what Nora said about Lorene squeezing her arm, the drawing. I kept my voice steady, even though my hands were shaking so badly I had to put the phone on speaker and set it on the table. The silence on his end lasted so long, I thought the call had dropped. "Mitchell?" "She's exaggerating, Mom. Kids exaggerate. Lorene is firm, but she would never—" "Your daughter flinches when an adult raises their hand near her face. That's not exaggeration." You don't know what it's like, okay? Nora can be difficult. She throws tantrums. She doesn't listen. Laureen handles it. Handles it how, Mitchell? Another silence. And then his voice cracked. Not in anger, in something older than anger. Mom, I can't do this right now. When can you do it? When she's 10? When she's 15 and won't speak to either of you? I'll talk to Laureen. Talking to Laureen is not enough. He hung up. I sat at the table and stared at the phone, and felt Franklin's hand on my shoulder. He squeezed once, firm and warm, and said, "You did the right thing." Then why do I feel like I just lost my son? Because doing the right thing and feeling good about it don't always happen at the same time. I used to believe that family was the one thing that couldn't truly break, that no matter what happened, blood would hold the pieces in place. Now I know that blood doesn't hold anything. Choice does. And some people choose to look away. The remaining days with Nora were the best and the worst of that year. Best because she started to open. She laughed more. She stopped asking permission for everything. She let Franklin teach her how to plant basil seedlings, getting dirt under her fingernails and grinning about it. She fell asleep on the couch one afternoon with her head on my lap and Professor on her chest. And I sat there for 2 hours without moving, because I didn't want to disturb the safest sleep she'd probably had in months. Worst, because I knew it was ending. Mitchell and Laureen came back on a Tuesday. Laureen walked in first, sunglasses on top of her head, smelling like airport perfume. She hugged Nora and said, "Did you have fun with Grandma and Grandpa?" Nora nodded. She didn't say a word. Laureen looked at me. I looked back. Something passed between us. Not words, not even a full thought. Just recognition. She knew I knew. I could see it in the half-second delay of her smile. Mitchell loaded the suitcase into the car and came back to hug me. He held on a beat too long, and when he pulled back, his eyes were red. "I heard you, Mom," he whispered. "I heard you." "Then do something." He looked at the ground, then at his car, where Laureen was buckling Nora into her car seat, then back at me. "I'm trying." They drove away. Nora waved through the back window until the car turned the corner. That was 4 months ago. I wish I could tell you that everything changed, that Mitchell confronted Laureen, that Nora is safe and thriving and free. But the truth is more complicated than that. Mitchell calls more now. He's started bringing Nora over without Laureen, which is new. Last month, he mentioned, casually, like it was nothing, that he and Laureen were working through some things. Karina told me privately that Mitchell reached out to her for the first time in years, asking about family counselors. Small things, slow things, things that might be the beginning of something, or might be the appearance of change designed to keep everyone quiet. Franklin and I lie awake some nights and talk about it, whether we should have done more, whether we should still do more, whether the line between respecting our son's family and protecting our granddaughter is a line we should have crossed harder and sooner. I keep Nora's drawing in my nightstand drawer, not as evidence, as a reminder. A reminder that the things children can't say out loud, they say in other ways, in flinches, in silence, in a red scribble pressed so hard into paper it tears right through. Nora called me last week. Mitchell handed her the phone, and her voice was brighter than I'd heard it in a long time. She told me Professor missed me. She told me the basil we planted together was growing in a pot on her windowsill. Then she said, "Grandma, can I come stay with you again soon?" "Anytime, sweetheart. Anytime." After she hung up, I sat in the kitchen and cried. Franklin came in, saw my face, and didn't ask what was wrong. He just pulled out a chair, sat next to me, and held my hand while the afternoon light moved across the table. That's 41 years of marriage, knowing when words help and when they're just noise. I don't know how this story ends. I don't think it's mine to end. But I know that I'm paying attention now in ways I wasn't before. And I know that the next time someone tells me something is wrong, I won't call it an overreaction. I'll call it what it is. A door opening. And I'll walk through it, even if what's on the other side terrifies me. Have you ever noticed something in a child's behavior that made you realize things weren't right behind closed doors and had to decide what to do about it? I'd really like to hear how you handled it. Drop your story in the comments. And if this one made you think, please hit that like button and subscribe. I share stories like this every day, and sometimes the ones that are hardest to hear are the ones that matter the most.